And now, instead of actually working on the video, I'm just out here standing in a park by a lake. I guess the water's pretty cool at least. So, my bad. I initially started working on this video immediately after the first one came out. I wrote it, I recorded it, I edited a good chunk of it, and then realized that I hated it. And so I went back to the drawing board. I rewrote it, re-recorded it, edited a big chunk of it, like probably a little over half, and then life got in the way and I lost like all motivation to work on it. And when I did have motivation, I had no time, and a bunch of other stuff happened, and now I'm back. I don't know what things are gonna look like after this. I do have a script written for the next video after this one, but I can't promise anything, and I will not promise you're gonna see that anytime soon either. So for now, let's just hope you like this one, I guess.
LEGO Star Wars 1 was overall a pretty good game. It gave you a simple retelling of the movies in slapstick LEGO form, with tons of locations to explore, puzzles to solve, and stuff to collect. Now, it should be said that this is not a perfect game. I definitely have my fair share of problems with it. For one, characters moved really slow, and so were some of their abilities like using the Force or opening doors with droids. Combat was also frustrating because despite encouraging some strategy here and there, the lightsabers were slow and most enemies didn't give you a window to approach them, so you would constantly die, especially amidst larger crowds. Also, the game overall just felt like it was compensating for a lack of content, even though it had a decent amount of it to offer. Now, ideally, what we want LEGO Star Wars 2 to do is iron out the kinks. This means speeding up the pace of the game, adding more strategy to combat, and balancing out all its content over a single playthrough. So let's talk about what the game doesn't completely screw up. LEGO Star Wars 2's overall presentation is a step up from that of LEGO Star Wars 1. The game now has widescreen support, some UI elements have been changed or improved slightly, and it all kind of makes the game look nicer than its predecessor, which already looked pretty impressive on 6th gen consoles. The cutscenes also lean much heavier into the comedy from the first game, which would feature the occasional joke here and there. Instead, almost every cutscene has some sort of gag this time around, from a Tusken Raider milking a bantha like a farmer to R2-D2 shaking his head at a data disk like a baby refusing its food. As for gameplay improvements, there are a good few. There are a lot more interactable elements in levels now, and some new character types to go along with them. There are levers to pull, rideable vehicles and animals, certain doors that can only be opened by Imperials and bounty hunters, and speaking of bounty hunters, they can throw detonators to blow up silver objects. You can also build things out of Lego now, which for some reason wasn't in the first game. Isn't that like the whole point of Lego? Whatever, I digress. The older character types also have some new abilities. Jedi can use mind tricks, Sith can choke people, and blaster characters can dodge incoming bolts. Some of them can even dive and fire rapid bursts. Overall, the levels tend to hold my interest for longer than they did in the first game. Along with a few fundamental changes to the previously established formula, it all feels fresh and new. For instance, the character customizer, which feels just as at home in a Lego game as the building mechanic does. You can make some pretty fun stuff here, even given how limited the options are. I remember using it a little bit when I was younger, but I actually had a lot of fun coming back to it. I made this guy Darth Alex, and I even gave him a friend, Gun Alex. Other additions include the special bounty hunter missions where you have to find a character hidden in a level, the red power bricks hidden in levels which unlock new extras that make you pretty overpowered when you get enough of them, and the gold bricks which unlock more levels in game modes. Now, unfortunately, they can't all be winners. I think it's time we address the issue of pacing from the first game. The biggest problem that I had with it was how long the game felt, which mainly stemmed from a lack of variety, and LEGO Star Wars 2 does make an effort to address this by adding more things to do. Unfortunately, the core gameplay is still pretty slow. While the Force seems to have been generally sped up, everything else still needs some improvement. The new additions to combat can be fun. I like playing as blaster characters even more now, but there's even less reason to use lightsaber wielders because there are very few lightsaber fights in the original trilogy, and the lightsabers still feel kind of lame to use.
Hey, look at all these moves. You're not as good as me with my lightsaber moves. Yeah, this guy's worse than before.
There's also actually less enemy variety than there was before. Most enemies just have guns and that's it. I'll give them this, the Gamorrean guards are more fun to fight because they actually block blaster bolts, but that's the only exception that comes to mind. Another issue I have with combat is that this game relies so much on infinitely spawning enemies, and I can only remember 2 levels in the first game that did that, and one was Jedi Battle, which was one of the best levels in the game. Another thing that was changed for the worse was the vehicle levels. There were 3 vehicle levels in the first game, and going back to them, I actually really liked them. 2 of them were pretty fun on-rails shooter levels where you have to just get to the end and blow some stuff up along the way. Pretty simple, and I liked coming back to them a lot more than I did initially playing through them as a kid. There was also the pod race, which again is still pretty fun, save for a few small frustrations, but none of them overstayed their welcome. The vehicle levels in LEGO Star Wars 2 were given a complete overhaul. Instead of being on rails, these levels let you move freely in an arena occupied by hordes of enemies and turrets. Most of the time your goal is to destroy glowing pink targets with torpedoes, and in Hoth battle with bombs, but I'll get back to you. Again, wouldn't you know it, these levels are slow. They all take forever, and most of what they boil down to is looking for torpedoes, grabbing 3 at a time, finding a target, blowing it up, backtracking to find more torpedoes, rinse and repeat. It gets boring pretty quick, not to mention the constant barrage of enemies that make you drop your torpedoes if they kill you. There's also Speeder Showdown. This level has you hopping between ground and vehicle sections chasing after scout troopers, and that's pretty cool, but again, it really starts to drag on. Listen, I get they need to stretch out the movie over a third of the game, but this level shouldn't take 20 minutes when the original scene is like a quarter of that, and you're basically doing the same thing 4 times in a row. But all of those pale in comparison to Hoth Battle, which, in my opinion, is by far the worst level in LEGO Star Wars 2. It takes place on the ground, so you have to use your tether to grab these bombs and blow up the roadblocks keeping you from getting to the next area. The bombs constantly get stuck if you're not careful, so you have to go slow, but if you go slow, then these droids will catch up to you and grab onto the bombs, not to mention that they also explode if they touch any destructible object, so you keep having to go back and grab more. The AT-ATs are pretty fun to take down because they work just like the movie, but then the game makes you blow them up with bombs anyway, and if you're not quick enough, then they'll get back up, so they're still super tedious. Maybe I'm a little salty because I missed True Jedi twice in this level, but I get a headache just talking about it.
What the fuck?
No more saying cuss words, guys!
I would love to say that all my complaints with this game end there, but there's one more fundamental flaw I have with how it's structured. The first game relied on replayability through free play in order to keep people around long enough to see what the game had to offer. One thing they made use of was the Super Kit, a model of the Rebel blockade runner from the opening of A New Hope. When you got True Jedi status in a level, a few pieces at a time would be added to the ship, and when it was finished, you would unlock a level where you got to play through the beginning of A New Hope. It felt like a great reward, partly because the level is abundant with studs, and partly because playing through the level lets you unlock Darth Vader. LEGO Star Wars 2 ditches the Super Kit in favor of the gold brick system. I don't hate gold bricks, but I sure wish they were implemented better. You see, gold bricks aren't just unlocked by getting True Jedi anymore. They're unlocked by beating levels, getting all the mini-kits in a level, beating new character and vehicle bonus missions, doing the bounty hunter missions, buying them from the cantina, or doing Super Story, which has you play through every level in story mode, disables all of your extras, and forces you to watch all of the unskippable cutscenes that you've already seen at least once before. In addition, you have to get True Jedi twice now, once in story and once in free play, so if you miss True Jedi in story, you have to go back and watch the cutscenes again. What's the reward for getting all the gold bricks, you ask? A fountain that spits out studs. It's not as cool as Darth Vader. Like I said, the levels hold my interest for longer, but the levels themselves drag on way longer than the first game, and forcing you to play through the same levels a minimum of 3 times each, and probably more unless you really comb through them for studs, kinda gets old after a while. The game has loads more content and things to do than the first game did, so what's the point of having all this needless backtracking? I would much rather play through every level once in story, once in free play, and then check out all the extra content if I feel like it, but locking a large portion of that content behind multiple playthroughs is super tedious, and having to get True Jedi in story mode is probably the worst thing I've ever seen in a LEGO game. There's no reason for it to be here. For all its annoyances, I really can't recommend this game over the original.
No, don't pull, no! Ah!
I honestly didn't think I would feel this way going into this, and maybe it's because I didn't grow up playing this game, but there's something about the simplicity of the original that I really prefer here. You know what I think would be great? If you were to take the content from the first game and the content from the second game, and you were to balance it all out and remove all the unnecessary stuff that drags it down, and put it all together in one complete package, these games could end up being something really special. But one can only dream, right?